All right, I'd like to, oh, that's really
Feedback.
wow. I'd like to call to order this planning and zoning meeting on January 23rd. The time is 6 p.m. Can I get a roll call vote, please, or attendance?
Mr. Marmon?
Here.
Ritchie? Barris?
Here.
Waterman? Here. Darling?
Here.
Stecker? Weiss? Nate?
Here.
Is that everybody? Small group. Okay. All right, the third item on the agenda would be approval of the agenda. If anyone would like to make a motion for that.
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Next would be the minutes approval for the November 14th meeting minutes. If I could get a motion for that.
I'll motion.
And then a second.
I will second.
Thank you. And then we would open for public comments for any. Oh.
Do a voice vote on that one.
Oh, yes, sorry. Can we do a roll call vote on that? On the minutes approval?
Yep. Marmon?
Yes.
Ritchie? Barris?
Yes.
Waterman? Yes. Darling?
Yes.
And Nate?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now we would open for public comment. This would be for any item that is not related to something that is on the agenda. Do I have anyone here for that public comment section? Okay, moving on. We don't currently have any old business, so we'll move on to new business. Item 7A would be 2024 annual election of officers.
As this is your first meeting of the calendar year, this is customary on that. Traditionally, at least since I've been here and looking back on records, we've always kind of gone with the same chair and vice chair for a 2-year period. We're 1 year into Courtney being chair and Sarah being vice chair. So I'll leave it up to the commission to decide, but that's really all I have to report.
Do you just need a motion to retain Courtney as chair and Sarah as vice chair, if that's what we?
If that's what you wish, yes.
And then would we do a roll call vote on that? Is this an item that we
Yeah.
vote on? Okay.
Did you make a motion?
Yes, I will make a motion to retain Courtney as chair and Sarah as vice chair of the.
Second.
Okay. Can we get a roll call vote on that, please?
Yep. I'm gonna leave Sarah off. Barris?
Yes.
Waterman?
Yes.
Nate?
Yes.
Marmon?
Yes.
Darling?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And then we'll move on to item 7B, approval of the 2024 Planning and Zoning Commission calendar.
Hopefully you're good with it because you're here and already abiding by it, but again, just want to get the commission's blessing on the dates. I think the only really oddity we had this year was the Christmas time of the year, and that fourth Tuesday is falling really close to Christmas, and trying to do it the week before, the week after just didn't work out at all. So we're only scheduling one meeting in December, and that would be the second Tuesday.
So would we make a motion on this as well?
Yeah, and you can just do a voice vote on this one. I don't think we necessarily need to do a roll call on it if we're good with that.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion on the calendar?
Make a motion to approve.
In a second. Thank
This
you.
is-
Misty.
Misty.
Thank you.
Yes, it was Misty Darling. Thank you.
Thanks, Misty. All right, so all those in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, so we'll move on to item 7C, Pickard Park Industrial Rezoning and FLUM Amendment. First part would be consider request from Eric Cannon for a future land use amendment for property identified as 2103 East 2nd Avenue, parcel number 490/239-0621.
So Eric Kidden on behalf of iTown Investment Group
is requesting an amendment to the future land use map as well as a rezoning for 2103 East 2nd Avenue. The request, if approved, would partially guide the property for industrial uses as well as partially rezone the property to M2 General Industrial Zoning District. Properties adjacent to East 2nd Avenue would remain zoned for the Highway Commercial Zoning District. So that would be that north area.
Can't hear you.
At all.
Can't hear you.
Okay. But this shows the left portion is the comprehensive plan, what the land use designation is guiding for. Currently, it guides for community mixed use. Let me show that. So that's this area. And it's currently zoned for the C2 highway commercial. So they could do commercial uses as it exists today. If it were to be rezoned, this is what that, if the request were to be approved, this is what that amendment would look like. So generally that northern area would remain highway commercial with the southern portion being industrial. Just to go over the adjacent future land uses, those show parks and recreation, low, medium density residential, and then community commercial. And then zoning districts adjacent to the property is A1 for agricultural, and to the north is R2, single family residential attached. The applicant has provided a conceptual plan for the site. An official subdivision plat and subsequent site plans would need to be reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission prior to approval. So tonight, the only item on the agenda is that future land use map amendment and the rezoning request. Uses for the site are speculative. However, the applicant has indicated potential outdoor storage and storage units as a potential use unless that's changed from last conversations. The house will be demolished and street lot A would be provided. So this is the general location of the house that's on that property. Street lot B would extend southerly, so that's this area, and then be terminated by a cul-de-sac. There are 5 commercial lots shown generally in this area, and then 4 industrial lots are shown totaling approximately 10 acres, again on the southern portion. When considering a rezoning and future land use map amendment, the Planning and Zoning Commission must first find consistency to the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan currently guides for community mixed use in the area. The applicant is requesting to amend that plan to show an area of the property as industrial. The comprehensive plan does guide for an additional 22 acres of industrial land uses to support economic growth and potential for large industrial development. Compatibility guidelines in the comprehensive plan recommends avoiding new areas of incompatibility between adjoining land uses. This can be avoided by incorporating transitional land uses, which reduce the degree of incongruity, or through the use of buffers. Commercial future land use map designations and zoning may be considered as transitional land uses for industrial zoning districts as intensity of land gradually increases. And then consistency with the zoning code, this will be reviewed further in detail if when a subdivision site plan application is received for the portion, if this request is approved. And then on spot zoning, to determine whether legal spot zoning has occurred, the courts must consider the following. The characteristics of the surrounding property. To the north of the property, there are 4 single-family dwellings zoned for the R2 single-family residential attached zoning district. These lots are not directly abutting the subject property and are separated by approximately 80 feet of right-of-way from Highway 92. To the east and south is undeveloped land and row crop production and is currently zoned for A1 agricultural zoning. And to the west is Pickard Park, which hosts the annual national tour for disc golf tournaments. Second is the community's comprehensive plan. The future land use map designation for the subject area is community mixed use and is consistent with the future land use map designations to the south and the west of the site. The future land use map designation to the north is low to medium density residential, and to the east is parks and recreation. Urban buffers may buffer from potential incompatibilities such as Highway 92 or East 2nd Avenue, buffering between the subject area and residential areas to the north, as well as parkland to the east. The third is the protection and preservation of public health, justice, morals, order, safety, security, and welfare. For the future land use map amendment, staff is recommending approval as submitted. And then for the rezoning request, staff is recommending that the request be approved with conditions. And that condition is that a buffer according to chapter 16508 titled Open Space, Landscaping, and Buffering be required between the proposed area for rezoning and dedicated parkland to the east. So this shows what that area would look like. So the yellow highlighted areas show the buffer yards between the industrial areas and the commercial areas. So they would be required to install a buffer park with berming to hide visibility from the highway, as well as the green area would provide buffer between the industrial areas and the parkland to the east. And with that, if there's any questions from the commission.
I have a question really quick. So would we do this as two separate motions? They would be two separate items. Okay. Do we have questions or concerns from council members?
We ask
Commission
them later.
members? Sorry. Do
We ask some later.
you have anyone in the audience here to speak on this?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, Eric Cannon, 2727 Southwest Snyder Boulevard. Here we have.
Speak up. Would you speak up,
Yeah,
please?
where's the mic at? Is it
The green.
you're right there? Eric Cannon, 2727 Southwest Snyder Boulevard. Here on behalf of Snyder and Associates, civil engineer on the project. We do also have representatives from the ownership here, if you guys do have any specific questions. So, Emily, I don't know if you have the kind of that exhibit I sent today. I think that might be helpful to kind of talk off of.
They've got copies of them.
Oh, you guys got copies of it as well? Okay. So what we try to do to help communicate this a little bit better is we did kind of show an aerial background and a couple concepts here for kind of what we're looking at for potential development. So we are looking to just rezone that southern portion of the site to industrial. And the main reason for that is discussions with staff. There's some contractors looking to go in here, one being G&G, which some of you may be familiar with. They're a grading contractor, landscape contractor here in town. Staff felt they needed to be in industrial zoning. Also looking at like an HVAC contractor, electrical contractor, plumbing contractor. Somebody like a contractor suite is really how we kind of call it, where you may have a little bit of storefront, a little bit of an office, but then you'll have some overhead doors for your vans to go in and out. But really not like an industrial, like you would think with a concrete black batch plant or, you know, some big contractor or anything like that. That's not really the intent here. So, you know, working with staff, we wanted to make sure we got an appropriate area. The zoning was appropriate for the uses that are proposed. Part of that discussion was how do we kind of treat this area? And so the berming and the buffering was important. So here what we have shown is we would be putting a 3-foot berm along the east side. There's a really dense existing tree line there with Pickard that we're gonna protect, not touch. That is important to stay there. That's the best buffer that we have. To the north between the commercial that is already commercial, that's gonna stay commercial. We would put that 3-foot berm in there and plant material, so that would really provide that additional level of screening up against the highway there. And then along the west side, we are going to, even though we don't have to yet, establish that berm and buffer now. We feel like the sooner we can get that in, the longer it has to grow and establish from that property to the west. And the other thing is they are the property owner to the west as well. So they're really kind of buffering from themselves and any potential future development they have there. To the south, there's a big stand of trees, that kind of that ravine area there. So really kind of encompassing this entire site from a screening standpoint. The other thing I would note is this site sits down about 20 feet lower than the highway. So it does really, this ground really falls off to the south here. So naturally you have that kind of that separation from the highway because it just sits down so much anyways. But in general, wanted to just provide that level of detail to you, give you some, again, conceptual at this point where buildings and some of the drives and stuff may sit and how they use the property, but up front, we threw in a couple commercial buildings, just not knowing exactly how that's gonna go, but, parking up front, kind of that building up in there is kind of the intent as well, but happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
Do we have any questions?
So the buffer, the berm, is essentially just a visual.
Yeah. To put it really simple out, I mean, we require them from quite a few different uses, multifamily to residential, it's required, commercial and industrial, and then any industrial, commercial to residential, they're just required. You've got options with buffers, there's an option for a 30-foot wide buffer and a 60-foot wide buffer. And depending on which one you go with, both of them, I believe, require berms. There's just different levels of landscaping. So for the narrower ones, there's more landscaping that goes in it. And for the 60-foot, there's less landscaping that goes into it. But ultimately, the developer is able to choose which one they want to go with.
Is there anybody else in the audience that wanted to speak on this item?
So does that mean we're gonna have lots more traffic? We live right across the road.
Ma'am, could you step
Yes.
up here and just state your name and address?
Okay. I'm Marilyn Lawson, and we live right across the street at 2100 East Second Avenue. And so we're concerned about more traffic, because 92 is pretty busy already. And these industrial places could be bringing us lots more traffic. So we're concerned about that. What could be done about it? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just really puzzled why you're even considering commercial or instead of residential in an area so close to the schools. Because that seems like the more appropriate things to be put in there is residences where kids can walk to school and not businesses when we already have industrial parks in town. Lawyer Lawson, 2100 East Second, sorry.
Thank you.
Just to answer the question, the reason it's being considered is because an application was made to the city council. The city council passed it to the Planning and Zoning Commission to make a recommendation. Nobody that I know of from the city is proposing it. The applicant is proposing it, and it's our responsibility to try to deal with that application, that proposal, and make a recommendation to the city council. That's the reason it's being considered. I have a question now. Do we need more industrial area in the city?
I don't have anything to back it up. I would say we somewhat have a shortage right now. In the industrial park that the city just assisted with some of the infrastructure in the industrial park Plat 3. The only thing remaining in that development right now is a 25-acre piece. The developer in this instance is not willing to divide that 25-acre piece up at this point in time. He's hoping to sell it as one piece to a larger user. That could change in the future, who knows? So when we're looking for smaller industrial lots like what's being proposed here, that's one thing I constantly hear from a lot of people is that we don't have enough of them in the city, and the ones that we do have are either unavailable or just not for sale.
If the city were to decide that we needed more industrial property, what would be the normal way of determining where that would be?
Existing land uses, you have to look at a few things. So obviously our industrial park, the city's got a lot of investment out there with utilities, a lot of investment with some of the upgrades to the roads that we're currently doing and everything right now with Hillcrest Avenue. So that's traditionally been our focus. You also need willing landowners, obviously. That's always been one of our hiccups out there, is that we've got land that's owned by one or two people who are not willing to sell. This recent addition that we did on that 60 acres, we just were fortunate enough to come in at the right time. That property owner was fortunate enough, I should say, to come in at the right time, where the property owner was willing to sell. Other things you need to look at are just transportation, and that's one of the things with this one. Kind of where recommendations coming from is Highway 92 is a major arterial. It's one of two major arterials in the city, the other being Jefferson. So when you're looking at a transportation network and quick access to that transportation network, that is available as well.
One of my concerns is that that the city hasn't identified any place for industrial, okay? And so what we're really kind of put up with here is, because somebody applied for this, then we're forced into making a recommendation about whether or not it should be industrial, rather than the city doing some kind of review, maybe in conjunction with planning and zoning, to determine where it would be best to have an expanded industrial area. And it seems to me that maybe this is the area. I'm not saying it isn't, but it seems like we're kind of being almost forced into, well, we are forced into dealing with it. Is this the right spot or not? Without the benefit of really looking at other places and say, would it be better in another spot? Isn't there a better place to have expanded industrial? That's one of my big concerns about this. Also, not too long ago, 18 months ago, we approved a residential zoning change out in that area from agriculture to residential. And I don't know what their plans are for the use of the other land that they own there adjacent. But I'm not faulting people in the past, but you know, at some time, Laverty elevators looked like a good idea. Now it's not a good idea, you know? In fact, the city would very much like if it weren't there, along with the county building and the city maintenance and all that, which there are plans to change if they ever become available. And I guess I'm concerned about creating another Laverty elevator situation on the east side, where we've already got houses on one side, we've got a public park on one side. Down in the southwest corner of that property, there's potential for residential. There's a nursing home out there. It seems like it's starting to get an odd mix. And I think we would be better off with better planning of where we should have an expanded industrial area, rather than establishing one just because somebody wants to put one there or some other place.
The only thing I'll add to that is that we do, I mean, our comprehensive plan does show future industrial areas that are not developed yet. And again, that is really around the current industrial park right now. So we do show those on our comprehensive plan. We do plan for those areas in the future. And you've got to have a lot of things line up for developments, you know, and right now we're kind of blocked by a landowner out there who's just wants to farm the land.
Yeah. The other thing I'm concerned about is the long list of things you can do in M2. Because once it's zoned, then they can do whatever there's listed in as a permissible use. And I have a question about that. Some are listed as, I think, principal or permitted uses, and the other are S's. That's a special.
Use permit, okay.
So who decides that?
Board of Adjustment.
Board of Adjustment decides that. Is that reviewed by the city council? Another concern I have. Because if we give a stamp of approval, it's gone. as far as our review is concerned. And I don't want to do that, quite frankly.
The only thing, just to counter that, is that if it's a principal permitted use, if it's P on that table, you would review it as a site plan.
Right.
It's where it's a special use, then that goes to the Board of Adjustment to be reviewed, and then they review the site plan.
But the city council can't overrule them.
I'd have to look at that. I know there is a section of code where they can remand a decision by the Board of Adjustment if the city council disagrees with it. I think that might be tied to variances, though I'm not 100% sure.
Can I say
Those are
something?
my concerns.
Come on up.
Hi, Lee Adams, 17567 120th Avenue here in Indianola. Totally agree with what you're saying, Al. We've printed off 5 things that are in commercial zoning that are exactly what we're proposing here. This gentleman that sits right there, his building's in commercial. Property is already zoned commercial, but I think there's been some changes, correct me if I'm wrong, Charlie, that is forcing, like G&G's been looking for a spot for almost 3 years. There is a shortage of industrial property in this community, a big shortage. These people are providing jobs. Another person in the front there that qualifies under the commercial is another Indianola resident that has employees, New Era Homes, but he's just gonna have his office there. So totally agree with what you're saying. And I think it's just there's already proper buildings like this zoned commercial. So it's a little perplexing from our point of view that
Yeah, we're not,
are we really commercial?
I get you're concerned what might be built there, but I mean, I'm building there. It's not up for debate of what might go there. That's where I wanna build my office and be my permanent location.
Up in Vanderlinden, and like what,
Excavation and landscaping business.
Can he build that in the commercial?
If there's outdoor storage, no, and that's really what puts it into
It's the
the.
outdoor
So
storage.
That's
the equipment outside, that's
that's
considered,
what's going on here. All of a sudden now, if you park your car out there, you're industrial. So,
Well, and not so much that.
so it's not
I
an
think
easy thing here.
On this one, from the landscaping business, it's outdoor storage of mulch piles, things like that really bring it in. I'm not sure the vehicles do necessarily, but I'd have to just look at that. But again, it's the landscaping business.
So if there
There's just a lot-
wasn't mulch piles?
I'd have to look again. I don't remember exactly what it is, but we are very specific with outdoor storage. The second you're starting to store materials outside for the business, that's when it goes into the industrial.
and that was recently adapted.
That was in 2021, yep.
Because of Vanderpool Construction, Sternquest, they're all Zone C commercial. That's what
No,
we're
they're
getting
all
at.
industrial.
No, they're industrial.
He's got them printed right.
Beacon shows still under commercial.
It's probably their
Assessed.
classification. Does it say classification or zoning?
It shows
Classification is the tax
commercial.
classification. It's different than zoning.
Yeah, because if you go to Cement Tech, it shows industrial on theirs, so.
That's the Warren County Assessor comes up with all of those. I don't know necessarily how they classify that, but it's different than zoning.
It's kind of confusing then if you're trying to compare businesses to businesses and it's zone commercial.
Classification for the assessment versus the use, yeah. Al, sorry, this is Misty Darling on Zoom. So I totally understand what you're saying, Al, but I think there's an element of supply and demand, and there's an element that goes into play of, like, we can designate areas as this is where the city thinks would be a good place for this to go. But if there's not a landowner willing to sell it for that use, then you have to go another direction. And a highway corridor makes a lot of sense for an area that is going to have industrial use, because in this sort of situation, because they're going to need access for transportation and things coming in and out. And I mean, maybe what is the flexibility, Charlie, in when there's an opportunity that comes up and a need that hadn't been seen before in having some flexibility of land use and all of that?
In what sense are you asking on the flexibility? Just,
Well, Al's concern was comprehensive plan and what's been laid out for it, which makes a lot of sense because there's a lot of effort being put into that and planning for the future. But then sometimes there's things that we don't predict, and then there's things that come along and we need to accommodate it. So obviously your recommendation was that we approve it, but just kind of circling in Al's concerns and how we address that, we're making sure that we're keeping in line with the comprehensive plan and looking to what our community needs in order to keep employers and businesses thriving here.
I'll just, from staff standpoint, we've talked a lot about this one in particular. There's a few things that really drove our recommendation. First, the existing zoning on the site is C2 as it stands today. It's not A1, it's not R1, so we're not changing from that. So that kind of started with some of our discussion. The second being, again, we're not changing the entire site to M2. It is just the more southern portion of it. You can see from the grades that are on the screen here, there is quite a bit of fall. I know Eric mentioned that as well too on the site to buffer it from the highway. Really our outstanding concern at that point was just the buffering of the industrial use from the park. And I think, that's where our recommendation with the buffers coming in on that, because that is not a requirement by code. Obviously the applicant is already showing that they're going to do that on there. So I think that's really what played in on, our standpoint of saying, okay, well, maybe this does work here. If it was an A1 site right now, or if it was residential zoning right now, I think a lot of that would change. I'm not sure that we would necessarily be in favor of it at that point, but again, it's an existing commercially zoned lot. And that's kind of really what started our discussion at looking onto this change.
I don't know their plans for the future. They do own the land to the west. I'm also a little concerned about industrial creep. That this could be a big industrial area in the future. The logic being, well, that's industrial, why not make this industrial? It's like being swallowed by a boa constrictor. It's a little bit at a time. I have that concern.
And is it a situation, Al, where we're like our perception of what industrial is? I mean, it's for the applicant and the people that are wanting to go there, it's small businesses that are serving Indianola and the surrounding areas. It's not like factories. And it's a lot of, I think the changes that we've had in our code has created some of this as well. I mean, I've seen it in land that I've had for sale that there's a lot of businesses that are looking at pieces that it's just not going to be an option unless it's zoned industrial. And so it's really limiting their options.
I have a question. Sure. Marilyn Lawson. There is a house across the street anyway from where we live, so there's something that was zoned residential. Anybody know what's going on
That
there?
house is to be taken down, correct?
Correct, it's actually it's somehow it got zoned commercial with the house currently on there before we purchased it.
20th Street's probably gonna run. That's why we purchased the property next to it, because eventually we're gonna run a street there.
Straight off 20th Street.
So I didn't want to build a street for somebody else, so we bought the property next. We are looking at residential there. I'm not, now the front part on the highway, to me, you may want to do a small couple commercials there. It is Highway 92. I don't know that we want townhomes or whatever right on the highway, so, you know, hopefully we get some activity there. We may have some interest in maybe another, you know, highway commercial lot, you know, that somebody may want to purchase. I know there's a dance studio that wants to come. That would be a perfect spot for them. I probably get 4 calls a week, people looking for things to be built or so it'd be nice to have some property for them. Lady wants to relocate her dance studio from Des Moines. That was a call from the chamber. I'm not sure her name. I haven't met her yet. But, so, yeah, but that's why we purchased it, not to do more industrial, just because we're gonna spend $400,000 on a street, and the guy next to it's gonna get to use it, so we figured we better get it done.
Do you own all the property over to,
Well, it'd be another 18, so it can,
I think there were, can you go back to one of those earlier slides? I think there's 3 pieces of property in there.
yeah, and we just purchased that one.
It's just the one directly adjacent to this one,
Yeah.
too.
It's the same exact
Yeah.
size, just straight to the.
And then
Yeah,
there's
it's just-
some other owner on that 3rd piece over?
Yeah.
Yeah, the gentleman we purchased that second piece from owns those 2.
Okay.
I have some, so
Go back. Okay, so the R2 is the orange. Okay, and then the nursing home is labeled D.
It's PUD.
What?
It's a PUD. It's an old PUD.
That little nursing home area? I'll be darned. Okay.
Well, the schools have been out there forever, and I agree. I think it would be a good spot for some residential. I don't know why in 30 years, nobody's put one stick of a house up out there except on the north side of 92. But to me, it
Okay,
might not be a bad spot for that.
thank you.
Yep.
also I got, so if you look at the whole, where it's all farm ground currently, this is, go to Charlie, so you can't service the back with sewer. You can't service the back here with sewer, so all this land is unserviceable currently for sewer. So here's your low spot, okay, right here. This is surrounded by trees, you can see all the waterways going, this is the tree line here. So to me, you put your pump station, your low spot here, leave it surrounded by trees like they did on the backside of 20th there. So the trees here would, me, I would never take them out if I was a developer, because I don't want to have my house looking at a pump station. So there's always going to be a natural buffer between us and residential's in here, because the pumping station will have to be put at this location for future growth. There's no other place to put it unless you put it on your guys' park. That's what I'm saying.
And I'm sorry, can I get your name and address?
Yeah, Gene Mercer, 17439 120th Avenue. I'm one of the owners of G&G Landscape and Excavation, so.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
And he is right on that. We've looked at the sanitary sewer capability on this entire 160 out here, because we've had people interested in developing into the past. And I think honestly, that's probably what stopped it, is just that we don't have any sewer capacity really on the southern, approximately 2/3 of the property. That's not perfect. There is some capacity out there, but we've looked at it, we know what it'll take, and it's similar, if you recall, with the Quail Meadows subdivision, before 3 and 4 started going in up there. That ground up there was not serviceable either by sewer, so the city, once that land sold and the developer was ready to go, the city worked with him to put that lift station in out there, so we could get the capacity out there, so probably something similar to what we do out here.
And so from my understanding, the reason for wanting to rezone is from commercial to industrial is for the outdoor storage.
Well, technically, for my business to be there, it has to be with the new zoning and the rules you guys adapted, it has to be commercial. I mean, industrial, sorry.
Okay.
I no longer fit in the other category.
This is a really a tangential question that I understand doesn't come into play per se in this situation, but if this is something that the city keeps running into, where there's a debate over rezoning something industrial so that it can fit these types of uses that are, now popping up everywhere, where it's like the storefront with kind of storage in the back, is there a avenue for reconsideration of what the zoning entails?
Yes, so we can do that. In fact, that actually came up recently with one of the things that we now do not allow for any longer in the commercial district is self-storage units. Those are all M2 as well too. Just before Christmas, this came up. There was a request made to the city council to reconsider allowing those in there. City council didn't even forward it to the planning and zoning commission. They said no before it even got to you. So same avenue forward. I don't know if this would change necessarily. But with the self-storage, there was a lot of discussion on that, on should we allow those on our highway corridors? Should we not allow those in our highway corridors? Similar, the outdoor storage came up in the same capacity. I can't speak for the council. That may be something they would be considering, but.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with Al's point in that, we have, there's a giant list of industrial approved uses, and
Giant.
so without an actual site plan approval coming through at the exact same time, there's no assurance for the community that, you could pivot and not build that and then it's rezoned. So I understand that. And
But they could still build anything listed in M2 there with site plan approval, because they'd still have to get site plan approval, but instead of lawn care, it could be a automotive truck and equipment auction facility, right?
Not knowing exactly, again, there's size limitations too. Typically with industrial lots, you'll see them, 5, 10 acres in size. These ones are much smaller than those. So they're smaller industrial lots to begin with than what you typically see, but you are right. I mean, that's one thing that we always have to be cautious of is, we're hearing that they intend to do this, they intend to do that. But, if they decide to sell the ground in a month or two and somebody else buys it, then the current zoning that's in place on the property governs what happens out there. Not saying that'll happen, but it is always a concern.
Yeah. One of the things I'm concerned about, if the city doesn't lead the process of deciding where industrial should be, we're going to be subject to, and the city council will be subject to the argument, well, you did it over here, why not do it over here? Without the city having a plan of where we would like to have industrial. You don't have any planning then. You have individual responses to individual applicants. And it seems like we're kind of failing to plan as a city. There are some others, that ended up that way. Storage units on Hillcrest. They're built on what was M2 on the north side of the street. That was an old M2 designation that has been there for a long time. I asked Chuck Bergen once if we could change it, and he said, no, the landowner will not even consider selling it. So the people who live in those houses north of it were very unhappy when those storage units were built there. And I think we should try to avoid those things. Anyway, I think I've said enough. I'm going to vote no, but those are the reasons. It's not on a whim.
So is it something where we need to instead explore expanding what is allowable within C2 so that there is more, quote, control over what can be put in a C2 area when it's already that? Or is it something that we don't, do we even have that ability to propose that, I guess, Charlie?
No, I mean, it's gonna have to be something that goes to the council and gets referred back down to you for review and recommendation. You can request the council refer it to you, but that's about as far as that can go.
Because to me, like, this would all be avoided if a landscaping company is available or is right to store landscaping products within a C2 area. No rezoning would need to occur. Is that correct?
I'd have to look at it again on the outdoor storage component. I know we talked about vehicles too. I don't know if there's any allowance for vehicles to be parked outside in the C2 or not.
It's like trucks, trailers, like that isn't
Yeah.
allowed if there's no outdoor storage.
So,
Could you split, I guess, split C2 as to if has highway frontage versus non-highway frontage?
I like that idea, Al.
Excuse me?
I was just saying, I like that idea. Like it's taking in account if it's
There's-
something that is open to the corridor versus not.
just for example, that was essentially what we were trying to do with the storage units as well too. It was kind of the angle we were trying to go, and the council shot that down, so. I don't wanna say they would do the same thing here, but.
Do you have any other questions or concerns from the commission?
You know, my big concern is I don't want us to drive productive businesses out of our community because we don't have a place for them.
Would anybody, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I guess I just wanted to say one last point. There was a lot of thoughtful consideration on this. I mean, it is 500 feet off the road, off a state highway, 20 feet of elevation change, buffering around all sides. I think we're trying to make every effort possible to calm these concerns about these uses in this location. We don't have existing neighbors next door, right next door to the west or to the east. I mean, we have agricultural ground to the west. We have a park to the east. And even if you look at the park location, the fields are adjacent to the commercial portion of this. So trying to find an appropriate location and use, we feel like this is about as good as it gets. And again, these lot sizes are not going to be conducive to a large scale industrial. They're just not going to come here. They need a big space. Vanderpool needs a big space. Batch plants need a big space. They need places for semis and all those type of things that I think are fear of everyone here about what could possibly go here. The market is going to demand what you can do based on what's available. And I've been doing this for 20 years. Big industrial parks are 40, 60, 80 acres for a reason. Because if you need that type of heavy industrial use, you need the space. So again, I understand your concerns, Al. I know I'm not going to change your vote.
No.
But I just wanted to let you know that this is not a light decision from a property owner standpoint either. They're not just buy it, ram it in, just because I can do it. Was consideration given for all of those elements. So just want to make sure everybody understands that.
And really quick, I just see the chat here. So Sarah Ritchie's on, but she's chatting. I don't think her audio is available. So she did ask, given some of the business showing interest, which is the dance studio, New Era offices, why wouldn't commercial be viable? So Sarah, the property is currently zoned commercial. They are keeping the commercial zoning on the frontage of the highway. That's where those businesses would be located, so they would be viable in the commercial. It's just the back, I want to say roughly 50% of this property that is being rezoned to industrial. So if you can see the map here, Emily's showing that that blue hatched area there is the area that's being rezoned, and that dance studio and those other uses would be located on the frontage.
Yes, sir.
Just have a quick question. Is it even legal for that John Deere scooper to be parked where it's at now because it's not in that back half of the lot where that business would go.
Yeah, it is. It's private property, they could park it there.
So Sarah had a follow-up question, where would the large trucks be entering, exiting? They would be coming up through that area into 92. So the access is from Highway 92 down to the cul-de-sac, and then those lots around the cul-de-sac there would be the industrial zone lots. So they would be coming up and entering and exiting the site off of Highway 92.
Do you have any other questions? Would anybody like to make a motion on C1, which is the amendment for the future land use?
I'll make a motion on C1 that the amendment to the future land use plan be approved as submitted.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Miranda, roll call vote, please.
Marmon?
Yes.
Ritchie?
Yes.
Ferris?
No,
Boardman? Yes. Darling?
Yes.
And Nate?
Yes.
Thank you. Would anyone like to make a motion on item C2, which is the rezoning request on 2103?
I'll make a motion on C2 to recommend recommend alternative 2, that the request be approved with the condition of the buffer as outlined in what we were shown.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Miranda, roll call vote, please.
Ferris?
no,
Boardman? Yes. Darling?
Yes.
Nate? Yes. Harmon?
Yes.
Ritchie?
She's voting no on that one.
All right, we will move on to item 7D, consider waiving a right to review of a land division request for Matt Thomas for a property located within 2 miles of the city of Indianola.
Okay. So this is a request from Matt Thomas for a division split east of town. The property is outside of priority annexation areas. So for that reason, staff is recommending waiving the city's subdivision authority. If there's any questions or comments on that one.
Does anybody have any questions or comments on this item? Would anybody like to make a motion
I
on?
have a question. Do we ever plan to annex out that way, or what if these people want to come into the city? City going to accept them?
Probably not that far up, no.
Because we're getting closer and closer.
Yep.
More houses and.
When we look at these, we look at our priority annexation areas, and if it's in a priority annexation area, we do not recommend waiving. We'll take it to you. If it's outside of a priority annexation area, that's where we ask for the waiving.
I guess it struck me when I looked at the map here and all the houses there, and then I know there's some more land for sale on the north side of 92 out there for houses.
And I was just gonna add on this one, it is closer to the city of Ackworth, so state code, if you have like a subdivision split, generally it goes to the city that's closest to it. So, but Ackworth hasn't adopted their jurisdictional 2-mile boundary code, so because of that, it defaults back to on Indianola to review this request. So typically, if Ackworth did have that code, they would review it, not the city of Indianola.
Would anybody like to make a motion on this item?
I move the staff recommendation of waiving review.
All right, thanks, Al. Would anyone like to second?
I can second that.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Ferris,
Yes.
Ordemann,
Yes.
Darling,
Yes.
Nate,
Yes.
Marmon,
Yes.
and Richie.
Yes.
All right, we'll move on to item 7E, the planning and zoning training.
Really quick, and I'll let Emily take this. She's put this presentation together, but this is something I know that she's wanted to do and we wanted to get kind of started, is just a package of training exercises that we can provide to Planning and Zoning Commission. We've got some new members here. Some of the newer members were on staff before, so maybe you should know all this stuff, I don't know, but anyways, as
It will be
we.
a task.
Yeah.
Pressure
As
on
we,
me.
again, it's something that I think we want to try to do on an annual basis. I know the Iowa State offers training every so often, but that's not necessarily convenient for the commission because that's usually up somewhere in the northern part of the metro. So I'll let Emily take it from here.
Okay. So just to start with an overview of our department, so our community development department does have 5 staff members on it, and just to go over the rules, so I'm your associate planner, responsible for like application intake, pre-screening applications to ensure that there's submittal requirement, or all of the submittal requirements are included, responding to inquiries, etc. Our building official, Tim, reviews permit applications for new construction, alterations, additions, as well as conduct inspections to ensure the built environment is safe, accessible. Our code enforcement officer, Mike, inspects rental housing as well as ensures that properties continue to comply with land use and zoning ordinances, health and housing codes, sign code, uniform building and fire codes, and just overall to protect public health, safety, and welfare in the community. And then our administrative assistant, Miranda, supports every aspect of the work that the department does, maintaining the interface between the public and the services that the department provides, including organizing and supporting public meetings and hearings such as today's, publishing monthly, quarterly reports, and record management. The department provides staff support to the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Board of Adjustment, and the Downtown Square Commission. These boards and commissions comprise of volunteers that dedicate their personal time to provide input on policies which shape our government and our community. The Planning and Zoning Commission and the Downtown Square Commission serve as independent advisory commissions to the City Council, meaning that you provide generally a recommendation first to the council and then they take final action. The Board of Adjustment acts as an adjudicating board, so generally their decisions are final unless they're appealed or contested. And then just focusing in on each of the boards and commissions. So P&Z, Planning and Zoning, is responsible for making decisions and recommendations regarding the development of the community. The Planning and Zoning will recommend action to be taken on case applications such as site plans, the division of land, or changes in land use. But you also provide recommendation on zoning ordinance adoptions, amendments, as well as help to prepare long-term planning and visioning plans. The Board of Adjustment is tasked with upholding the integrity of the zoning code and the Elevate Indianola Comprehensive Plan. They make decisions on applications for special use permits and variances, and on occasion, the board will also hear appeals concerning decisions and interpretations made by staff. And then lastly, the Downtown Square Commission is trusted with ensuring a vibrant and flourishing downtown center. The commission will review special event applications, right-of-way leases, and sidewalk use agreements when it relates to the downtown square. And when there's funding available, the commission will also serve as a reviewing body for the downtown facade and interior improvement grant program that is provided to the city, by the city, to downtown properties and businesses. There are a number of other boards and commissions at the city, including Parks and Recreation, Hometown Pride, Indianola Public Arts, and Sustainability. These boards and commissions receive administrative support from other city departments. At times, responsibilities and reviews may overlap with each other. And then to get into the comprehensive plan, so the comp plan is the community's visual guide to future planning. It includes long-range planning policy to guide decisions about the development of the community. A comp plan will include a implementation matrix, which consists of strategies and action items to help bring the community's vision to life. But it'll also include a future land use map, which describes desired types, intensity, and spatial arrangements for each land use in order to achieve a vision described in the plan. The future land use map serves, again, for future decisions about zoning, development, and infrastructure investments. It differs from the zoning map, which we'll get into, as the future land use map is a guiding document. It's meant to assist in decision-making, whereas the zoning map provides actual property rights to the title holder. And then this just shows the zoning map. Again, it's considered locally adopted law, so when a property is rezoned to a particular district, it gives that property owner a set of standards or rights based on the zoning. This outlines the future land use designations within the comp plan. These designations will typically outline what the density of the land should look like. So for low density residential, typically you see 2 to 5 dwellings per acre. And then it also shows what acceptable uses may be. So for community mixed use, you could see overnight accommodations, automobile-oriented businesses, etc. The comp plan is not the only long-range planning document or policy guide that the city has adopted. Plans like the City Square Master Plan outlines key recommendations for the design of the downtown area, and the Community Wayfinding Signage Plan is a branding policy for signage throughout the city to take visitors to key destinations. We are in the process of 2 long-range planning and visioning studies, including our housing study and needs assessment, as well as a gateway study, which focuses on the gateway entrances to the city and would address vital traffic safety concerns. And then we're going to go over each of the development cases that our office does see. So the first is a land use change request. So this is submitted for a change in a land zoning or the future land use map designation, or in the case of tonight, sometimes it's both reviewed concurrently. A site development application is submitted for both construction documents and site plans. A site plan is required for new development projects that include new uses, buildings, structures, conversions, changes of uses, or changes and modifications to building facades. A site plan can be classified as major or minor based off of the scope of work and how much is being paved or how much of an addition is being brought to the site. Minor site plans typically are reviewed administratively by the department, so they may never come to planning, zoning, and city council unless requested by staff. A land division request is submitted to divide, alter, or adjust property. State code does allow cities to review division requests that occur within 2 miles of city limits. Typically, the city waives review if the area is outside of a priority annexation area. A vacation request allows for publicly owned property, such as an alleyway, easement, or street, to be reverted back to private ownership or authority. Typically, these requests are approved when the maintenance at the public's expense is no longer justified, and no adjacent property owners would be denied reasonable access. So this is a case that we saw this past year. It's an old alleyway that's not paved, it's grass, and at the city council meeting, it was decided to revert this back to private ownership. A variance request is heard by the Board of Adjustment and allows for reasonable deviation from code requirements when an unusual hardship exists for a property. A variance is meant to restore property rights that other properties typically have, but the property itself can't enjoy because of physical limitations. Variances can't give special privileges that other properties do not have, and cannot approve a land use that is otherwise prohibited in that same zoning district. Cases heard by the Board of Adjustment do require written findings of fact to prove unusual hardship for the property owner and support the decision that the BOA takes. in those written findings of fact, an unusual hardship could look like a property having steep slopes or easements which would impact the siting or location of a structure. It doesn't include socioeconomic status or the financial situation of the applicant, and generally, if the applicant does have other options or if the applicant is acting out of desire rather than hardship and need, the variance would not meet findings of facts. And then lastly, a special use permit is also reviewed and requires written findings of fact by the Board of Adjustment. This type of permit is required for types of uses which may require special or additional review by the city because of the potential effects it may have on the community or due to sensitive circumstances. For example, and this is a case we did have last year, was the large-scale solar panels submitted by IMU. Required a special use permit prior to development for more stringent review to prevent any nuisances such as glare to affect the roadways or adjacent properties. And then just going into the general case review timeline, each of the previous development cases are submitted and administered by our department. Each may have a different review process, so this is just going to give a very general baseline of what the process looks like. So to start, certain applications such as a major subdivision or a major site plan will require a conceptual review or a pre-application meeting to take place with the development review team. At these meetings, staff will share with the prospective applicant what city code requirements are, infrastructure needs, and any other items necessary to stay consistent with the comprehensive plan. Planning staff will provide follow-up to the applicant, generally outlining the applications needed, the permits required for the project scope, and then the zoning code and any other regulations that they need. And then following that, when the applicant is ready for submittal, it is received by the Community Development Department to start the review process. All required information and associated fees must be received for full and complete submittal. When the applicant is ready, or once the development review team has reviewed the application, they will review for like all of their items, like utilities will review for infrastructure needs, parks, any like parkland dedication, trails, public works, etc. Would review, they'd provide comment if there is any, that would go back to them, to the applicant to address. If there's no outstanding information needed or items to be addressed, it gets forwarded onto the board or commission for their review. Staff will then generate a staff report outlining the request, compliance to the zoning code, as well as consistency to the comprehensive plan. Staff will also provide a recommendation from the department on action to be taken. The board will hear the board and the commission would hear the request. They could either adopt staff's recommendation or there's alternatives that are outlined in the staff report. And then in the case of planning and zoning or downtown square commission, that recommendation gets sent to the city council for their final review and decision. At times, city council decision may contrast from the recommendation provided by the commission. Decisions made here at the city council level are generally final unless appealed or contested. After final decision, staff does follow up with the applicant for next step items that may include additional development cases that need to be submitted or building permit applications. And at times this follow-up may have conditions that need to be met as part of the approval. And then going into some just general planning terms, a non-conforming use, or what you may have heard as grandfathering or a pre-existing condition, refers to property or uses which do not conform to current regulations and ordinances. Non-conforming uses, when legal and have pre-exist zoning code adoption, cannot be expanded upon or exceed the prior established use, as it would increase its non-conformity. For example, the house on the right has a non-conformity as the setback of the house is less than what is allowed for in the code, making the house closer to the street. If the property owner had submitted a building permit to extend the house further south, for example, towards the street, it would decrease the setback from the property line and would increase its nonconformity and would not be allowed. But if the property owner were to build, for example, a second story on top of that existing nonconformity, that would be allowed by code, as it wouldn't increase the nonconformity of that setback to the property line. Typically, these changes are due to subsequent changes in zoning code. At one point, the setback may have been allowed, but is no longer allowed by current zoning code regulations. Legal non-conforming uses are allowed to continue. However, typically alterations to non-conforming property is often prohibited unless the changes are not substantial and do not affect the neighborhood. And then spot zoning refers to zoning decisions that result in a single parcel or small island of property with a different use from the surrounding property and is illegal. When courts review whether a rezoning decision resulted in spot zoning, they look at the following: the characteristics of surrounding property, comp plan, and then the protection and preservation of public health, justice, morals, order, safety, security, and welfare. So for example, if the zoning to the right was zoned R1 single family residential detached, and we can see the general characteristics of the area is low density residential. And if the comp plan further supports that this area needs to be low dense residential, we can safely assume that the zoning needs to comply with that. If there was a property owner to submit a rezoning request because they would like to open a coffee shop, based off of those characteristics, the comp plan, the application is likely not going to meet the standards set for rezoning and would likely be illegal spot zoning. Likewise, the location would impact the preservation and protection of the public welfare for the neighborhood, seeing that it would be on a cul-de-sac and doesn't have adequate spacing for buffer yards, on-site parking, etc. But with that, that's all I have for the training. So this was just a very intro level for P&Z, and we can always go into further depth if there is any topics that P&Z would like to see.
Emily?
Thank you, yeah. I know we don't vote or do anything else with that.
Not on this one, no. Unless you want to vote to say it was awesome.
Buzz?
Yes. Good work.
All those in favor say aye.
But if there's any questions on any of it too, we're happy to answer it.
No, but I do think, I like that maybe if we could do that every so often and just kind of go over like some different stuff each time. I think it's really helpful. I know we have the trainings, but like you said, they aren't nearby, so sometimes it's hard to make time to be able to do that.
Next time we have like a 5.5 hour meeting, we'll start right at the end of that.
Yeah.
That would be
Great.
nice. Right.
Bring the coffee pot.
Yeah. If you bring food, maybe it would be okay, yeah. All right, we can do item 7F, annual report.
And again, I'll have Emily over this. Typically, we've always given you an annual report of what the Planning and Zoning Commission's done every year. It's been very focused on just the actions that you've taken, and Emily did a really good job with our annual report this year to go a little bit more in depth and make it look much better than I had done in the past too, but I'm gonna let her give the presentation on this and just some high level stuff on what we've accomplished this year.
Okay. So I'll skip this slide because this just goes over the department again. And we'll just start with building permits. So we did see building permits in quantity decreased by 26% since its peak in 2020. The overall value of new construction, remodels, alterations, and additions has increased though by 3/4, with the total valuation for construction in Indianola exceeding $40 million in 2023. So, and this is the 4th consecutive year that it has increased. There are several new developments that are anticipated to increase permitting and valuation in the upcoming years, in addition to those new developments on the horizon. There are 81 available lots that are developable for single-family dwellings. And then in addition to those building permits, we saw 31 sign permit applications signifying new businesses and places being brought to the community, as well as expansions of existing sites. And then this shows that graphic for the number of building permits that we've seen within the last 5 years. So again, you can see that since 2020, our number of permits have decreased. However, the value of the construction has continued to increase. And and Charlie, you can speak on that behalf, but that's something that we want to continue to see.
Yes, yeah, I mean, for us, obviously, as long as the valuation is increasing, that's good. Numbers I'm not too terribly concerned about, but at some point, if those continue to go down, that valuation will probably start dropping as well too. So that's one of our focuses, is always evaluation.
Going into code enforcement in 2023, we saw 318 code enforcement cases opened with 330 violations that were observed. A few of those cases having multiple violations needing addressed. This number is similar to the number of cases opened for the previous year. Approximately 70 of those cases were abated by the city. We've received a total of 450 complaints, though not all of those have been opened. And those were for a variety of reasons, including some of those were forwarded onto other departments because they didn't fall within the department's authority or policing powers. They had active or open cases on them, so it didn't make sense to open another one if there was already an open case on it. Or our code enforcement officer went to the site and there were no observed violations. So especially like with mowing, if there's tall grass and weeds, sometimes we'll go out there and it's already been mowed by the time we get out there.
Can I ask a question? Where do derelict vehicles fall?
Junk vehicles, yeah.
Is that under junk?
Is it on, did you put that in the junk, debris and refuse?
Yeah.
Category, yeah. It's its own section of the code. We actually have a code section that is straight to junk and junk vehicles, but it does fall under the nuisance category, so.
Great.
On the amount of invalid cases that we were receiving or cases that we didn't open, to provide some context, because this year we did have more than we have had in the past. We did have one individual that submitted 255 code complaints in retaliation after being found in violation of a building code requirement on their own property. Those complaints were submitted by that one individual and they were all reviewed by our department. So we did go through each one of them and check to make sure that there were no violations that were on there. The most common complaint submitted in 2023 related to tall grass and weeds with dangerous trees and junk, debris, and refuse following. And then here are some examples of some sites that we've seen in the past year. So this just shows a debris pile on top of a car, junk, tall grass and weeds, more junk, and etc. So then now going into rental housing, this past year we did require Ward 1 and Ward 3 as part of a phasing plan to be brought into the City of Indianola's rental housing and registration and certification program. A total of 828 rental units were certified through the program, spanning over 199 unique properties. And of the properties that we've had on that list, only 2 rental properties were infracted for failure to obtain certification in the program. And then this just shows some of the common violations that, or not common, but some violations that we've seen on the job. So faulty outlets or fire risks, health concerns, some electrical panels, missing flooring, etc. To go over some website tracking that we've done, we've gathered nearly 14,000 views on the community development homepage. We started tracking this in March 2023. Our top visited pages this year included the main page, the current development projects page, Planning and Zoning Commission, so pretty popular commission. the city zoning map and the rental housing. We had 5,000 distinct visitors to our page, with 911 being returning users. Many visitors were located within the city or the Des Moines metro, but other users were located in other Midwest cities such as Chicago, Minneapolis, and Omaha. This year, we did add new web pages to increase transparency and accessibility of information to the public, including a long-range planning library where comp plans and studies will be publicly available. This continues to be a work in progress, but the goal is to have all of our adopted plans hosted on the website for availability. And then the website also now hosts a new FAQ building permit and inspections portal where property owners and builders can learn and understand permitting requirements for construction projects. So this shows a snippet of the long-range planning library. It will also link to current planning phases. So for example, our housing study, which does have an online survey available to the public. So if you haven't taken that yet, please do. But all of that is available there. And then this shows screenshots from our building permit and inspections FAQ page, which just guides people through the permitting requirements. And I think, at least for me, like I've noticed that the call logs have been reduced. I don't know for Miranda, but we get less calls on, at least for me, on fencing, so. RGIS, so this year we have launched a new interactive web-based application that allows the public to track development proposals in real time in an effort to increase transparency and aid in the understanding and visualization of project proposals that affect the community. Since the launch, the app has received almost 10,000 views and averages 26 views per day. We've also celebrated Worldwide GIS Day on November 15th with an educational online activity available to the public. The activity walked through users on what GIS is and is used for, as well as its capabilities through a mapping activity. The activity asked participants to map their favorite places within Indianola, and those places were then analyzed as users progressed through the application. We received 62 favorite places, including places such as Buxton and the downtown square. So this shows that current development projects map. So you can, in the software itself, you can zoom out and see all of the development cases within the city. It has a list of all of them, and you can click through and it takes you to that area. And then there is a card that shows you what the zoning is, the address, a description of the proposal, and then the staff contact for that item. And then this shows the interactive online mapping activity that we did. So at the start of it, the user would write out, or they would share a point on the map of what their favorite place is and what type of place it is. And then as they progress through, they can see all of the other maps that other people had inputted and use the analysis tools that are available through GIS. Going into the comp plan, this year the City of Indianola had accomplished the following benchmarks outlined in the comp plan, which is to reinstate the downtown facade and interior improvement grant, which saw a lot of excitement and interest from the property owners and businesses within the downtown square. As well as in late 2023, the city applied to the Community Development Block Grant Downtown Revitalization Fund, or CDBG DTR. This program would provide a over $1 million investment to the downtown Indianola Square. And then we've also hired a communications and marketing professional that has helped market and brand the city. Overall, the city has completed, started, or is ongoing on nearly half of comprehensive plan tasks. The remainder of tasks have yet to be completed or started. And then to break it down into the categories, we've completed 52% of the economic development strategies, 78% of both the housing and neighborhood strategies, as well as transportation, over half of the community services, and then under half for the environment and sustainability strategies. And this isn't included in the report, but it will be revised to include this information.
It's a nice graphic, so
Thanks.
great.
Over 40 development cases were reviewed by staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission, with most common application type being plat of surveys, many of those being outside of the city but within the 2-mile jurisdictional zone. Of the notable cases that we've had this year, that would include planned unit developments such as Emerald Bay, Deer Run, Kentucky Ridge, which each would provide a mix of residential and commercial if developed, as well as site plans such as Pipsy's Daycare, DeArmond Ford Expansion, and Sternquist site plan. Additionally, the Commission has reviewed multiple administrative and policy guidelines and code amendments such as the 6th Street Sub-Area Plan, zoning code updates to the sign code, and commercial vehicle parking in residential areas. 15 cases were reviewed by the Board of Adjustment in 2023, 10 of which were variances to the zoning code and 3 special use permit applications. Those notable cases throughout the year included the Indianola Municipal Utility Special Use Permit for large solar array system and a special use permit for liquor retail sales south of town. There were 2 appeals that were also heard, one including a concern on fire and building code safety requirements for residential tenant units, and one regarding a violation determination on vacant property south of town, which was also withdrawn by the property owner. And then the Downtown Square Commission heard over 21 applications and special items, including 9 special event applications and 8 sidewalk use agreements. The Commission also reviewed the Downtown Square Design Guidelines, as well as reinstated the Downtown Facade and Interior Improvement Grant. During the visioning process, as well as application intake for that grant program and the Downtown Design Guidelines, it was made aware to staff that there were areas of concern that could not be reasonably addressed within the grant program itself. And as such, the city had brought on Mid-Iowa Planning Alliance and Curtis Architecture on board to assist the city in developing its application to the CDBG DTR program. As part of that grant program, a lot of that funding would make improvements to downtown buildings by addressing slum and blight characteristics. Those characteristics include any structural concerns that a building may have, roofing repairs, tuck pointing, etc. The program also tends to make buildings look aesthetically pleasing because of addressing those slum and blight characteristics, as well as preserving historical aspects that can define a community's cultural heritage. The city anticipates hearing back sometime late this month or early February, so we'll hopefully soon have an update on that one. What's to come in 2024, we do have that housing needs study and assessment, which will give a comprehensive look into the housing market in Indianola. It shows the population and demographic analyses and projections for the next 5, 10, and 15 years, as well as gives us information about the makeup of households, as well as the cost burden in the community. It'll also give us an analysis of the housing stock and what the demand estimates are for us. We also have a gateway study. This examines the main 2 corridors into the city of Indianola, including Highway 65, 69, and Highway 92. Data analysis for this will show high crash and high injury locations along the corridor, identify areas for improvement and safety enhancement, including near school zones, and then also give us illustrative designs for land use, mobility, economic development opportunities, etc., around the gateway entrances and road cross sections.
But am I wrong? I thought the city council didn't want to go forward with the gateway study on the west side. Or am I confused about?
There was some discussion specifically on the west side about prioritizing that over the rest of them, but ultimately I think they decided let's look at everything equally and move forward with it, so.
This one will be looked at if it's approved in the FY25 budget, but the pedestrian bicyclist plan may come in 2024, as well as future updates to the zoning code, looking at the Main Street Iowa program, which provides financial assistance within that program for downtown areas, updates on the CDBG grant, and then completion of the downtown square reconstruction project, specifically the alleyways. But with that, if there's any questions, comments, happy to answer so.
Awesome, thank you, Emily. That was-
We're going to talk about these specifics.
Okay.
The housing study. What's going to be produced out of that? What are we going to know after it's done?
I think overall, when we're looking high level on that, it's where we're deficient, what areas of housing we're deficient in, what our current housing stock is as far as the quality of our current housing stock and all of that. Really, it's just gonna help us guide, look at population projections, kind of figure out where we wanna be as a population. We kind of figure out exactly what our mix of single family, multifamily and all of that stuff is. And then really what kind of housing we need to help hit those population projections.
I know like a part of that too is also looking at the trends that we're seeing within like the metro area and any long-term barriers and how we can address those barriers before they exacerbate or anything.
Did you say there was an online survey in there that people, so how do you get to it?
Yeah, I can pull that up.
While she pulls it up, I'll add, as a former housing developer, it also helps attract housing developers to the community to fit those projected needs.
Really?
And it can support applications for state and federal funding to help spur that development too.
Yeah, it was always on our list and just to add to that, it was always on our list of things to do. What really kind of spurred it was there was one, the old mobile home park there by the high school on 15th and Highway 92. We've got a developer looking at putting some workforce housing in there. Because of that and because of the credits that they were getting, they needed an updated housing study to help with that. So that kind of moved that up. We had capacity within the budget to do it last year, so we added it in there quickly.
Getting to the survey, so if you go to the City of Indianola website.
What?
The main website.
Yeah.
The city website?
City
Yep.
website.
Okay.
So if you go to departments and then you go to community development. And then if you hover over to long range planning and you click on that, if you scroll down, there is a blurb that takes you to the project website as well as the online survey. It's the same link actually, but I didn't want to confuse people on the project website. So, but this gives you, this sends you to where that survey is. There's image voting. There's also an idea wall, so you can submit ideas here for housing. And then we also did submit or did have the consultants put on preliminary data for our housing that we have. And I could just pull that up here. So
For why would anybody ever find that?
We put it out on social media. You're
Ah.
probably not on Facebook too much,
Are you
I would
kidding?
assume.
No.
So, yeah, no, we've done a really good job of pushing it out. In fact, our new communications manager and some of the conversation that we've had, there's a potential with some Des Moines Register publicity on it as far as the business record as well too. So we're kind of working a lot of those angles to really push that information out.
Okay.
But if you get on Facebook, you'll
What happened, Charlie?
What about TikTok?
It's also on the city's homepage as a city news blurb on the bottom of the page.
Ah, there, now that's likely.
I think,
Yeah.
did an email go out too? I feel like I got an email.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think we definitely put you on the stakeholder list just because of
Okay.
your role here plus what you do. So that might have been unique to that, but regardless, if the commission, we can, just as easy, we can send you the links for it too.
Well,
get the
that's
information
okay.
out to you. Well, no, I mean, and really for us, it's not that hard to do that, but we'd really appreciate as much feedback as we can, so.
or share it to other people too.
Yes.
But yeah, so this has all of the preliminary data. So this goes through cost burden, commuter patterns that we see in the city, economic indicators, family makeup. It just goes through everything, what our projected population is going to be, et cetera. So there's a lot to digest in this, so I'm not gonna go over all of it, just scrolling through, but that is something that's available, and then what themes that we're seeing in our housing in our community. So
When it's complete, will there be a community presentation on just like a summary? Great.
It'll come to you too as a board.
Awesome.
Did you have anything else on I know you and I have talked individually about the comprehensive plan strategic, or the implementation strategies, excuse me.
Yeah. You know what I'm interested in.
Yep.
I'm interested in linking energy savings, home improvement, some kind of abatement rebate program between the city and IMU. Because I think when we did the comprehensive plan, there was quite a bit of older housing in the community, and a way to increase value and save energy at the same time. I'm not sure how that can be done. I see other cities working towards it. City of Des Moines has some activity going on that way, and how we can move towards something like that. What needs to be done to get us involved in that? I know we're a little unique having our own utility.
Yeah, and in a conversation you and I had about this, we're part of the Central Iowa Housing Trust Fund, and I know Norwalk has used funds from that group to kind of do some remodeling grants up there. It was something that was posed to us pretty late in the process, but we didn't go forward with it this year just because we didn't have too much time to kind of digest it and see how it would work. But I think that's something with the assistance of Warren County Economic Development that we might look into in the future. As part of that, that could bring on some components of energy conservation, things like that. I know your role with the Sustainability Committee on a lot of that would be really important. I think we would, since that is especially a council-appointed committee now officially, I think we'd want to really bounce a lot of these ideas before we move forward with something like that off of them. As Emily showed in the presentation, the sustainability portions of our comp plan is where we've really been deficient on implementing strategies. And you can see when you go through the tables that we have here, there's big gaps in that one right now too. So I know the Sustainability Committee is interested in it, and the conversations I've had with you and a few of the other members, I think we're pretty interested in seeing how that committee can really help us get some of these implementation strategies started and completed.
If you refer to page 20, you'll see what Charlie's talking about, because there's a lot of not done anything yet.
I saw that when I saw it.
Yeah, it
And
sticks out.
just to clarify, I'm not on the Sustainability Committee.
You're involved in it. I know you're not on it. Yeah.
I'm a worker bee support person.
Yep.
My wife is on the Sustainability Committee.
So essentially you are.
But, yeah, and they have, particularly page 20 and 21 is kind of their wheelhouse, and,
Yep.
and they have a lot of interest in that. And I do too personally, of trying to link that and improve the community by upgrading what you have rather than just looking at new and additional. I'm not sure how to get IMU on board with it. I think, first of all, I think the city will have to lead with it and then get them to be on board with it.
Hopefully on the radar is the programs that are eventually hopefully going to roll out through IFA and IEDA via the infrastructure or the IRA. I know there's still, as of a few months ago, they were working to set up all the rules for all the programs, but the IRA had a lot of different funding, particularly for low to moderate income individuals for energy efficiency upgrades and things like that.
Okay, thank you. I'll still bug you about it once in a while.
That's all right. Let the sustainability committee know that, again, we're more than welcome to come to one of their meetings and go through some of this stuff and see how we can partner.
I think they would like that very much. I'll relate that to the chairperson.
Thank you.
Inflation Reduction Act, that's what I was looking for.
Yes.
That's what that funding is coming from.
All right, we can move on to item 8A, the building permit report.
It was all in the annual report. If you have any questions, let me know.
What about current projects?
Ditto.
Okay.
So, I mean, yeah, the other thing I'll update on those, the 5.5 hour meeting, all of those items were approved by council on their final readings at their last council meeting. In fact, the zoning map changes were made yesterday and are now showing on Beacon, so if you see those, that's fun. It was exciting for us to kind of get through that process, but again, it just shows, you guys had a 5-hour meeting. When was that, back in November?
November.
And usually even after your recommendation on this stuff, it does take a little bit of time just to get through those processes, so.
When do you think we're gonna see any site plans?
Subdivision plat for sure pretty soon on Emerald Bay. We've already got that submitted and are working through it and have already gone through one staff review, and the engineer's now working on changes to that, so I would imagine that would come pretty quickly here. And I think Deer Run's probably not too far behind it.
And we have site plans for Kentucky Ridge too.
Yep, and Kentucky Ridge is in there, so.
Really? So you're thinking sometime in February?
Maybe. It take, the thing is I wanted to jump in when Emily was in that presentation. When we're in our staff reviews, that's where the bulk of the time on these processes are spent. We do a really good job, in my opinion, at our turnaround times. We're usually 10 days on first review, 5-7 days on second reviews, and after that, it's usually just a couple days. It's always waiting for the property owner, developer, and engineer side to get those revisions back to us. So February might be a little bit of a push on it. If so, it's gonna definitely be your last meeting in February. I would expect it would probably be in March before that one comes to.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna be gone in February.
Do you want us to make sure we get it on February then? or- okay.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
I'm just curious, actually.
All right, would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
Can I ask one more question before we adjourn?
Yeah.
What, I'm just circling back to the conversation that we were having earlier. I mean, is that something that we're interested in entertaining, as requesting council to consider taking a look at what's allowed within each zoning district and or reassessing the special use items that are in maybe the C1 is what?
C2.
C2. Maybe taking a second look at the special use items that are in there to allow for some of these, if we're butting our heads up, I don't know.
I mean, I think it would be worth consideration to at least look into it, because it could eliminate some of like what we had tonight.
So how do we do that?
How about this? How about if there is a wish to do that, make a formal motion that requesting the council refer it back to you, something around that, just, it doesn't have to be perfect, just something formally from you guys, and then we can take that to the to the city council, and see what they would be willing to consider.
I'll make a motion to, oh boy, now I forgot what you said already.
Refer it.
Refer it to us.
To
Okay, I
have
will-
the council.
I will make a motion to have the council refer to us a review of the allowable uses within specifically the commercial and industrial zoning districts.
Would anybody like to second?
Second.
All right.
Are you gonna do that?
You're good.
Okay. Now would anybody like to, oh wait, we should probably vote on that. Yeah, okay. Can we do a roll call vote? Thank you.
Marmon,
Yes.
Richie,
Yes.
Harris,
Yeah.
Waterman,
Yes.
Darling,
Yes. I see you were muted.
We only need 5 anyway, right?
Yep, we're good.
All right. Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I think we should.
Okay.
Move.
Would anyone like to?
Second.
This meeting is adjourned.